Trump's approval rating climbs to 46% amid affordability push, but disapproval hits 52% overall. New polls show a Republican surge tied to his economic blitz, defying expectations with women voters. Yet net negatives persist on inflation and foreign gaffes, making this a hot-button, searchable divide. Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you might reshape the political map of America in ways few expected and even fewer prepared for. Tonight, we're looking at numbers that don't just move pollsters, they move markets, campaigns, and the national conversation. And whether you support him or oppose him, these numbers are impossible to ignore. So ask yourself as you hear these figures, what direction do you think the country is heading in? And more importantly, why now? In a nation split almost perfectly down the middle, former President Donald Trump's approval rating has climbed to 46%. Not a spike, not a temporary fluctuation, but a steady upward push that has stunned analysts across the political spectrum. Yet, at the exact same moment, his disapproval stands at 52%. A contradiction? Perhaps. Or a sign that the country is entering a political phase unlike anything we've seen in decades. As these numbers emerge, experts are calling it one of the most complicated polling moments of the modern era. How can approval rise while disapproval remains so high? Who is shifting? Who is holding firm? And why are some demographics, especially those previously expected to reject Trump, moving in the opposite direction of predictions? If you're watching right now, I want you to think about your own community, your workplace, your family. Are conversations changing? Are people reconsidering their positions? Let me know what you think in the comments as we continue. But here's where the story turns. Trump's recent affordability push, his laser-focused messaging on rising prices, household strain, and middle-class economic pressure appears to be resonating more deeply than expected. Across multiple states, Republican strategists report a sudden surge in engagement, especially regarding gas prices, grocery inflation, housing, and credit costs. These concerns aren't partisan, they're universal, and when economic stress rises, political lines often blur. Still, while this affordability message has pulled some voters toward him, especially in suburban pockets and rural districts, a large portion of the electorate remains skeptical. Many still link him to inflation dynamics they believe began years ago. Many cite foreign policy missteps, publicized gaffes, and unpredictability as major reasons for withholding support. When you look at the numbers, you can feel the tension between economic hope and political hesitation, and that tension is shaping one of the most watched approval battles of the decade. What surprises analysts even more is the unexpected movement among women voters, a demographic widely assumed to lean away from Trump in 2024 and 2025. But the new polling data tells a more complex story, not a majority shift, but a notable shift, enough to influence battleground states, enough to alter nightly strategy meetings, enough to catch attention from both parties. Why is this happening? Analysts are divided. Some attribute it to rising food prices, others point to safety concerns, others believe women voters are simply recalibrating based on household financial realities rather than party messaging. What do you think is driving this movement? Comment your thoughts as we move forward. Behind the scenes, campaign operatives are scrambling to interpret these sudden demographic changes. Data teams are working overnight. Advisors are calling pollsters directly. Both sides, Republican and Democrat, are recalculating their paths to victory because trends like these rarely occur without a deeper shift happening under the surface. If you look closely, you can see two Americas forming, one responding sharply to economic messaging and another rigidly unmoved by it. Yet both sides are growing louder, and louder voices often mean sharper divides, which raises the question, are we heading toward another political crossroads where the country feels like it's being asked to choose between two competing realities? Trump's numbers rise, yes, but so do his negatives. Approval at 46, disapproval at 52. A narrow window, a complicated picture, a country that can't seem to decide which direction the wind is blowing. And that uncertainty is where the real story begins. As pollsters dig deeper, they highlight a key detail. The voters responsible for Trump's approval increase aren't necessarily long-term supporters returning. They're often undecided voters reacting to affordability issues. Many of these voters express frustration with both parties. They're tired of political gridlock, tired of partisan attacks, tired of feeling like economic concerns are used as talking points rather than addressed with real solutions. If you're watching this and you feel that same frustration, you're far from alone. But despite Trump's rise among some groups, the reality remains that his disapproval is still higher overall. 52% is a significant number. It reflects distrust, fatigue, concerns for stability. It reflects the lingering impact of controversies, both domestic and international. And as foreign policy issues escalate around the world, many voters are uneasy. Foreign gaffes and unpredictable statements have kept even sympathetic voters cautious. That caution shows up in the polling as a firm ceiling, one that experts say Trump must break if he wants to truly capitalize on his affordability momentum. Which raises an important question. Is 46% the beginning of a new surge or the top of the curve? Experts don't agree. Some say the momentum will continue as long as economic stress continues. Others say his negatives will eventually overpower any gains. Still others say we've entered a moment in American politics where traditional rules simply don't apply anymore. The country is watching, the world is watching, and the numbers, every percentage point, tell a story of a nation wrestling with identity, priorities, and future direction. But here's what many analysts won't say openly. These numbers reveal a growing sense of political fatigue. Voters are exhausted, burned out, worn down by years of nonstop crisis cycles, and that exhaustion often creates unexpected openings that benefit the candidate who speaks most directly to
concerns
day-to-day
revolve around
concerns.
affordability more than anything else. The question is whether voters believe Trump can address those concerns better than the alternative, and whether the skepticism surrounding inflation and foreign policy remains strong enough to counteract his message. As we continue this story, stay with me, because the next section will dive deeper into the mechanics behind these numbers, how they shift, why they shift, and what they reveal about America's direction in the months ahead. If you're still watching, type "still here" in the comments, because what's coming next pulls back the curtain on the hidden battle over voter sentiment that most Americans never get to see. And as we move forward tonight, let's step behind the polling numbers for a moment, behind the percentages, behind the charts, behind the headlines that often oversimplify what is, in reality, a far more nuanced story. Because approval ratings don't rise or fall in a vacuum. They shift because millions of individual Americans change their minds, even slightly, even reluctantly, and each of those decisions carries a story of its own. Let's talk about what analysts are calling the affordability effect. Not a slogan, not a strategy memo, an emotional response, a gut response, a response grounded in the reality that millions of Americans are facing every single day. For some, it's the rising cost of housing. For others, it's food. For others still, it's debt that keeps growing while income remains flat. When you add those pressures together, you get something powerful. Something that can override political differences, something that can shift approval ratings, just like the one we're analyzing tonight. Many of the individuals responsible for Trump's rise to 46% are not enthusiastic supporters. They're frustrated citizens, people who feel like their monthly budget has become a battlefield, people who watch every dollar, calculate every purchase, and wonder whether leaders, Democrats or Republicans, truly understand what day-to-day life feels like right now. If you're watching this and you've felt that pressure yourself, I want to hear from you. Has the affordability issue changed the way you're thinking about politics, about leadership, about the country's fiscal direction? Comment and share your thoughts, because your voice is part of this national conversation. Economists have pointed out something that often goes unnoticed. When inflation rises, approval ratings rarely behave the way experts predict. Sometimes the incumbent gets blamed. Sometimes the previous administration gets blamed. Sometimes both parties share the blame. And sometimes, even in moments of economic strain, a candidate outside power benefits simply by pointing to the problem and promising a solution, even if that solution isn't fully defined yet. That's where Trump's recent messaging comes into play. His speeches, interviews, and campaign-style events have focused heavily, almost exclusively on affordability, more than foreign policy, more than immigration, more than cultural issues. It's a calculated move, and for many voters, the focus is resonating. But while this messaging is gaining traction, it is also facing resistance. A majority, 52%, still disapproves of Trump overall. Those voters cite different concerns: stability, tone, past controversies, foreign relations, the belief that the inflation crisis did not begin in the last year, but earlier, and for some, the concern that Trump's leadership style brings more volatility than relief. These aren't small issues, they're the foundation of political identity for millions of Americans. As one pollster put it, voters are emotionally split. They want economic stability, but they also want political stability. They aren't sure which choice gives them both. And isn't that the question many Americans are quietly asking themselves? As you listen tonight, I want you to think about how you define stability. Is it economic, political, social, a combination of all three? Because when voters can't find stability in their daily lives, they look for it in political figures. And that's where things become unpredictable. Polls start to shift in ways that break patterns. Approval goes up while disapproval stays high. Traditional voter blocs begin to fragment, and political strategists suddenly find themselves navigating territory that no longer follows historical rules. The movement among women voters, for example, continues to confound experts. It isn't a large-scale shift, but it's enough. Enough to spark concern among Democratic strategists, enough to inspire cautious optimism within Republican circles, enough to raise the question, what is driving this subtle, emerging change? Interviews with women across several states reveal a recurring theme: financial security. Rising grocery bills, rising utility costs, rising childcare expenses, rising rent. These factors create anxiety that transcends party affiliation. And while many women remain firmly opposed to Trump for personal or ideological reasons, a portion is reopening the conversation, not from enthusiasm, but out of economic necessity. This doesn't mean a major political realignment is underway, but it does mean the assumptions made in previous election cycles may no longer apply. And in a country where elections are often decided by razor-thin margins, even small demographic shifts carry enormous weight. Meanwhile, inside campaign war rooms across Washington, data operations are running at full speed. Heat maps, trend lines, focus group transcripts, all analyzed, reanalyzed, and fed into simulations, because every strategist knows that a polling rise like this, 46% approval, whether sustained or temporary, can change narratives, change funding, change ads, change public perception. Momentum is a currency in politics, and right now, Trump has a bit more than he did just weeks ago. But momentum doesn't erase negatives. His 52% disapproval remains a wall, a tall one, a wall that could stop his rise or hold it back unless he expands beyond his core base. Analysts point to what they call the persuasion gap, a window of voters still uncommitted, still persuadable, still watching closely. These aren't voters who attend rallies or post political messages online. They're quieter, more private, more cautious. They tend to move late. They tend to decide based on economic realities rather than political rhetoric. And in every major election, they play an
particularly
outsized
intriguing
role.
is that both sides, Trump's allies and his critics, believe they can win these voters. Republicans see affordability frustrations as a direct advantage. Democrats believe concerns about leadership stability and global diplomacy will outweigh economic messaging. It's a tug of war, a quiet one, but a powerful one. And while this tug of war unfolds, the American public finds itself caught between two narratives. One narrative says the country needs a return to tougher, more aggressive leadership. The other says the country needs calm, steady governance focused on rebuilding relationships and repairing institutions. Which narrative resonates more with you, and which do you think resonates more with the undecided voters shaping these polls? As we dive deeper, another factor emerges: media consumption. Polling analysts are noting a widening split between those who consume traditional cable news, those who rely on online independent outlets, and those who primarily get information from social media. Each platform creates a different reality. Each platform emphasizes different issues, and each platform shapes public opinion in subtly different ways. You might ask yourself, are Americans reacting to the same news or reacting to completely different versions of the same moment? That's part of why approval and disapproval can rise simultaneously, because different segments of the population are responding to different narratives. For some, Trump's economic message is front and center. For others, his controversies are top of mind. For others still, foreign missteps overshadow everything else.
The result is a nation where two contradictory impressions can exist at the same time and both be statistically significant. As we continue this story tonight, stay focused on something important: the volatility of voter sentiment. Polls don't predict the future, they reflect the present, and the present is a country wrestling with economic tension, political fatigue, shifting demographics, and emotional uncertainty. If you're still with me, tell me in the comments, what part of this story stands out to you the most so far? The approval rise, the affordability message, or the stubbornly high disapproval? Your answer will give us insight into how viewers like you interpret these trends. Because the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that these numbers aren't just statistics, they're signals, indicators of frustration, hope, concern, and shifting priorities, indicators of a nation trying to decide not just who should lead it, but what direction it wants to move in. Tonight, we're unpacking the meaning behind that struggle, and the next part of this story takes us even deeper into the impact of age groups, economic brackets, and voter fatigue on approval runs. Stay with me because the next moments reveal the hidden undercurrents shaping one of the most unpredictable political landscapes in recent memory. As we move further into this unfolding political landscape, it becomes increasingly clear that approval ratings are more than just numbers. They're reflections of shifting emotions across different generations. Age plays a defining role in how Americans perceive leadership, stability, and economic security, and while the overall approval number stands at 46%, the distribution of that support varies dramatically across age groups. Let's look at younger voters first, those under 35. Historically, this demographic has been one of the least supportive of Trump, and that trend still holds. But what surprises analysts is that disapproval among younger voters, while still high, has softened slightly. Not enough to signal a shift towards support, but enough to suggest uncertainty, enough to suggest that this demographic too is feeling the weight of affordability pressures. Because for younger Americans, many entering the workforce in unstable markets, many dealing with rising student loans, many struggling to secure affordable housing, economic anxiety is constant, and anxiety, even when not translating into support, affects how voters evaluate all leaders. Yet, despite this softening, younger voters remain firmly skeptical of Trump's message. Polling shows they prioritize issues such as climate change, social equity, and international cooperation, areas where Trump's messaging often clashes with their priorities. Still, even within this demographic, a small but noticeable group cites affordability as their top issue, eclipsing all others. These voters may not be shifting toward Trump, but they are becoming less rigid in their certainty, something strategists on both sides are monitoring closely. Now, if we shift to voters aged 35 to 54, the landscape changes significantly. This is the demographic hit hardest by rising living costs, mortgage rates, childcare expenses, tuition fees, grocery bills. These pressures combine into a daily struggle. Many in this age group are parents, caretakers, homeowners, or individuals at the midpoint of their careers. Their financial responsibilities are heavier, and their economic concerns more urgent. This demographic shows the most measurable shift toward Trump's affordability message. Not overwhelming, not decisive, but meaningful, enough to raise questions about how political priorities evolve during periods of financial stress, enough to suggest that for many Americans, their personal economic reality has become more influential than traditional political alignment. If you fall within this age group, I want to know, have recent affordability concerns changed the way you view leadership? Do economic pressures overshadow other political issues for you? Share your thoughts as we continue. Finally, we look at older voters, those 55 and above. Historically, this demographic has been more favorable toward Trump, but this time the numbers tell a more complicated story. While many older voters appreciate Trump's assertive approach and focus on financial concerns, others express growing discomfort with unpredictability in leadership, particularly on foreign policy and diplomatic matters. These voters place a high value on stability and consistency, factors they feel are crucial during global uncertainty. And it's within this demographic that the disapproval numbers show their strongest presence. Stability means different things to different Americans. For older voters, it often means predictability, trust, steadiness in international relationships, avoidance of unnecessary conflict. And when foreign missteps occur, real or perceived, they carry greater weight among older voters who have lived through previous political and economic shifts. Yet, even within this hesitancy, something important is happening. Older voters, despite concerns, are more likely to support candidates who focus directly on social security, retirement stability, healthcare costs, and inflation, all issues Trump has pushed to the center of his messaging. This creates a complex dynamic: approval tempered by caution, skepticism softened by economic concern.